Welcome to the Outer Realm with Michelle DeRoche and Amelia Pisano. Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Thursday night segment of The Outer Realm. We are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 and 107.7 FM from the city of New Orleans. Gotta get used to saying that again. Anyway, we're fully sponsored by the amazing people over at Folgers Coffee, who have been instrumental in keeping us here and have been a part of our journey since the very beginning. So thank you, Folgers. We just couldn't do it without you, and we appreciate you so very much. Also, very grateful for Dr. Snick, the sonic surgeon, aka Justin Snicker, who is the voice and the music behind our intro and our outro. We're so appreciative of your time and sponsorship. You can find Justin's stuff anywhere that good music can be found: Spotify, iTunes, Bandcamp, Amazon, you name it. He's an award-winning composer of Halloween horror, sci-fi, and dark wave electronic music. And hey, never, ever, ever goes out of fashion. Just check him out. Also, big thank you to the artist behind our artwork here at the Outer Realm, Mr. Steve McGinnis. Check him out on Instagram and Facebook. Just in time for Christmas. He does beautiful commission pieces, and he's got loads of stuff just ready to go in a pinch. So check him out as well. Tonight, we welcome the return of our dear friend, Dave Bennison of Historical Niagara. And the topic of discussion is going to be weird Niagara. I know it's kind of weird because it's like December and we're supposed to be all, but definitely it's us. So this is definitely a thing. Now, to be able to participate in the show this evening, head on over to one of the 8 chat rooms. And I have to say, before I name them off, remember, people, there are 8 chat rooms. It's like a super highway coming in one small lane. We will do our best to get to everyone. But for starters, head on over. Let's start with YouTube, UFO, Paranormal Radio, UFO Gods, and Extraterrestrials, and of course, the Outer Realm. Head on over to Facebook. Again, United Public Radio, UFO, Paranormal Radio, News on the Flip Side, Joe Montel, the UFO Undercover, Canada's Most Haunted, and of course, the Outer Realm. There we go. I think we are pretty much set as far as I know. We're all there. Everybody's going. So, Bubbles, how's it going?
Hi, how are you?
Good. You just got off doing another interview, so are you
Yes,
tired?
I did just an hour ago. His premiere show on our network, Paul
That's
Francis.
right.
Yes,
That's right. Yeah.
yeah.
So
He's
yeah,
a
it's going
good
to be a
friend.
great show.
It was a lot of fun. I used to do a show with him back in the day.
Back in the day,
We used to do readings for people on air, and it used to be afternoon for me because
Right.
he's in Cornwall,
Mhm.
UK. So, and Paul Francis was born and raised in Ireland, so it's nice to have that accent on our network. It's really nice.
I know.
And
I love it.
he's incredibly charming, and he's well versed, and he's got a great energy. So I hope you tune in. He comes up right.
You guys,
not
every
long before
Thursday
it.
night from 6 until 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 to 7 p.m. Central. Check him out. There's a lot of great things coming with this show. Otherwise, he wouldn't be on this network. So he's special. Anyway, speaking of special, we have our dear friend Dave Bennison joining us from Historical Niagara. It's going to be like really phenomenal. So why don't you segue everything in?
Sure. Thank you, Michelle. Dave is a 28-year veteran truck driver who just a few years ago started a side project as a radio host, interviewing celebrities, artists, musicians, historians, and paranormal experts. His love of history sparked the creation of an online web series called Historical Niagara that has become very popular, each week exploring the history of Southern Ontario and Western New York, Dave lives in Welland, Ontario, and also carves amazing staffs, canes, and pendants made from historic wood. His wife, Victoria, even wrote a book about it called Stick to the Story. Please welcome our dear friend and our special guest tonight, Dave Bennison, to the show.
Hello.
Hi there. Hey, just here's how we're going to start the show off. It's my party, and you can die if you want to. Now, that's a Dr. Snick song, right?
That is a Dr. Snick song, and we played it when you were on with Mitch Markowitz.
Yeah, you did, and it's pretty cool that I know Dr. Snick too. Great that you guys have him on board with you guys.
Oh, we're really grateful for him. Yeah, we really love him. He did a really great job with the intro and outro. We don't always have time to play the outro, and it kind of gets like, oh gosh, but the intro is just like everybody knows it, and it's really awesome. We really get a lot of compliments on it. So
excellent. So hey, it's great to be here with you guys tonight and bring a little bit of Niagara around the world. So
yes.
And of course, I do the history show, and it's been pretty busy for the last little while, and I sort of with Halloween, when Halloween came around, I started doing a little bit more of weird Niagara. So,
and you came up with some really interesting stuff that we hadn't heard before. But I'd like to back up just a minute. And what made you decide to just say, you know what, I am going to start this Historical Niagara. I'm going to start delving into the region, both sides of the border. I've noticed. And what made you decide to just go for it? Because I mean, you were really detailed. Like, you find some amazing stuff.
Yeah. Well, I've always had a love of history. Like, when I was in school and stuff, history was sort of my strong point.
Yeah,
and
me too. I loved it.
And I always loved like geography and geology and stuff. And when I got into driving truck, and of course, like I've been to every state, every province over the last almost 30 years, and just that love of going all around, the U.S. and Canada. I started, seeing a lot of these historical places, and when I kind of came off the highway, so I was doing long haul stuff, but now I'm just local. And when I came off the highway, this was sort of a way to keep my interest in it, but I wanted to do something local with local information in Niagara and outside of Niagara too, but include, like you said, Western New York, some of Southern Ontario, and find those things that, like little history bits that a lot of people don't know about. And it's interesting when I'm reading like the comments in some of the posts that I make.
You have a lot of interaction.
And you'll get people that, have lived here all their lives and don't know some of these things. And I love that. I love the interaction when I get people like, that'll do that. And that was the whole idea with the site is I'll put out like a general information. I don't like to put every single detail, because that's part of what I wanted to have, is that people can add to the details, and it makes it more interactive, and you get like different points of view from different people, or they'll bring a little bit of the history in, and it builds this story of the history. And I think that's one of the reasons why the page has become so popular. Like, we went from, basically 2 years ago, where I didn't do much in the last year, where we had, 1,000 people. We're almost at 10,000 followers within the last, 6 months now. And, and we're getting like each post is getting 5,000-6,000. Like, I'm getting some of the things are getting thousands of likes and comments on it. It's been pretty
because you just reached a milestone for that recently. Also, it was like 2 million.
2 million views on the page within the last
you deserve that. You work really hard.
Which is, it's work. It's work to do it, and the research and stuff. And hey, I'm not like, I always tell people on there, I'm not PBS, and I'm not, I'm just a truck driver that puts this together. Hey, I spell stuff wrong sometimes. I make mistakes on there, but that's part of the thing, is if people come on and they have like facts and information that'll build to the story, That's what they want. If you're going to come on and give opinions that don't have anything to back up, then it's probably not going to stay on there. But I love this. It became like this sort of like a network of people bringing history. I'll sort of put it out there, get the interest going, and then it starts to snowball. So, and of course, you know, for people like, you know, around the world and Niagara. So if we get into the weird part of Niagara's always had this fascination of, like, it was built, the tourism and everything in the Niagara area was basically built on the weird and macabre and strange things, you know, going back to
the Museum of Oddities.
Yeah, the museum, like, and you know, and that's where I think a good place to start. Like, whenever you want to start, we can get into
anytime.
Yeah,
and the stage is yours.
And you know, with Niagara, like if we want to start, like you said, museums. So one of the first museums actually in Ontario in Canada was at Niagara Falls. So where Niagara Falls is situated right now, there's a place called Table Rock.
Yes.
So you guys, that's where in 1824, the original museum was set up right at the falls. And there was a guy, his name was Barnett, and he was the one that started this. And at the time, it was just all these oddities and stuff. So
I own pieces from that museum.
The Barnett Museum. I
do. I know who bought it out.
We'll get into that. That was the original one, and it was there for, you know, into the 1880s, 1890s, and then he had fallen into some, competition with another group that bought that museum, and it actually moved to Niagara Falls, New York for a short period of time.
Wow.
And then it was bought and moved back to Canada, where it was situated, basically where it was for the longest time.
And this goes back to the 1800s, doesn't it?
Yeah, 1824 was the original one. Yeah.
Wow. I never had any idea it was that old.
Yeah, and of course the one now, it's not there anymore. I think it was mid 1990s. That museum closed down, and that museum, as you guys know, you guys knew one of the guys that bought all the relics.
I filmed with him.
That came out of there.
Yeah.
A really interesting sort of weird thing is that happened when, and you know, Michelle knows about this, and I'm sure Amelia knows, is there was a secret hiding in that museum
for
140 years. And when this transaction took place, they found out that there was a pharaoh that was actually housed in the Niagara Falls Museum, and nobody knew where this pharaoh was. It was Ramses the First. And
big deal.
And so for 140 years, it sat in Niagara Falls.
Yeah.
And nobody really knew what this was until it was discovered. And then the person that bought
it was a museum in Atlanta who bought, I think, 6 of them. And they knew right away they were looking at a royal pharaoh, because the pharaohs have their hands up. Yeah. They're the only ones. So when they contacted Zahi Hawass out of Egypt, he could tell just by looking at the face who it was, because the Ramses family all looks the same apparently. And and because they sent him back. Like, do you know that part of the story?
Yeah, he went back. They wound up sending it back to Egypt.
And he got a passport.
Oh, right.
They gave him a passport and a king's welcome. And and at the museum in Atlanta sort of got carte blanche on any of the exhibits out of Egypt to come. They had first bids on everything, because nobody, you know how many people, as you know, they have Egyptian pharaoh, not just pharaohs, but mummies and artifacts, and they don't return them, and they were all illegally taken. And these were taken like they weren't legal. That's what you did in the 1800s, right?
Well, that of course, that at that time in the early 1800s to mid 1800s, that's when, like, the British were, you know, they were going after all these tombs and stuff and taking all these mummies and stuff. It was second nature. They never thought about it then. I just always thought, like, what a place to start off that Niagara Falls is like the hot, and of course Niagara Falls, the town of Niagara Falls and the main part of Niagara Falls grew up around this, weird and stuff. You had you've had like Tesla there. You've had the different other museums. So
come on, people throwing themselves over the falls. That's not normal.
Marilyn Monroe was there. Marilyn Monroe was at the falls.
Well, Ripley's Believe It or Not had it set up there, and of course, it built this whole industry built on this this weird and stuff, and it's sort of like a, I always found it fascinating. That's a good place to start off, but one of the great, like I say, great story. 140 years.
Oh, it's amazing.
Here's a mummy. And,
there it is. Much
it was
to his surprise too, Billy Jameson.
Billy, yeah. That's it. And of course, the collection, it was, a lot of it wound up going
I've
to
seen
his
it.
personal collection. Yeah.
I've seen a good chunk of his collection at his home. It was just fabulous.
And it was unfortunate too. Billy passed in I think it was 2011. So
I think it was a long time ago now. And when I was invited to the party, he goes, "You're awesome. My Halloween party is the talk of the town. You have to come." I said, "It's the busiest night of my entire year."
That's right.
It doesn't matter. Nothing's more important than this. Okay.
Yeah.
And he did pass that summer. I was kind of like, oh, it was just really sad. He was really nice. He and Jessica were awesome. Yeah. But what a lot of people don't know about Billy, as we're on the topic of weird, that he actually spent 5 years in the Amazon with a tribe and learned all about cannibalism, and he ended up with authentic shrunken heads.
Yeah.
And he had me hold one
That's
time.
Crazy.
And it was a little, no, you want to hear crazy? This is crazy. Shrunken heads are supposed to look like a shrunken head with long dark hair. And he says, "Here, look at this one." And I'm just like, it was a little Caucasian red-haired man with a little red mustache. I'm like, ew. I cannot even touch this. And he goes, "No, really. No, really. Because this is just okay." Okay.
Do we know what happened with his? Is the collection still in Toronto? Do we know?
No, there were 2 auctions through Sotheby's, I believe it was. And everything was sold, and I mean the shrunken heads are authentic. There was some of them were going for like 60, 70 grand.
That they can do that.
How
do they shrink a head?
I have instructions. You can't use t-shirt. Honestly, I'm not kidding.
Okay, then if I pass away before you shrink my head, put me on your Christmas tree.
This little bobbly baby
and Bob will always be with you.
No, seriously, he gives me this t-shirt, and at the back it says "How to Shrink a Head." I'm like, for real?
Oh,
I still have it.
Sand.
I know, I still have it, but
all I know is Wayne better be scared to hear this, that you know how to shrink heads.
Anyone who knows her should be afraid right now. Very afraid. You're not far off either. So
no. But you know. Go.
I have 2 pieces. We've got a taxidermy peacock here. It's huge. That comes from the museum, and I've got a huge whale vertebrae that comes.
Yeah. See, Michelle's got the museum. Actually, it's in Niagara Falls still.
Right behind
it's in your home. Yeah. But with Niagara, like there again, it's tying it back into Niagara, and of course with weird and things like Niagara's had such a turmoil history for the last 200, 300, 400, 500 years in the area, and we bring it back to everybody knows, especially in our area, Niagara is one of the most haunted areas around. There's a reason for that, is because so much turmoil, and with the War of 1812 and the battles with the indigenous people before that,
the 1700s, Butler's Rangers.
And then and one of the big things, of course, is the building of the Welland Canal. And when the Welland Canal was built in the early 1800s, which was an engineering feat at the time, but it also cost a lot of lives. A lot of people lost their lives building this canal. And for people that don't know, that are outside of Niagara, there's 4 Welland Canals that were built. The original one opened in 1829. and then the last one was built in just before World War One, somewhere around there. It started construction and was built, but there's 4 different ones. But like literally thousands of people have died over those 200 years. So of course there's going to be all these haunted places. Like there's so much, happening here, and you get a lot of weird things that kind of happen. We can get into a couple of
we absolutely will. Tamara's got a quick question for you, Amelia. Can you get this?
Yeah, Tamara's asking, hi, Tamara.
Oh, yes, Tamara, yes.
Was Niagara Falls not sacred ground to begin with for the natives?
It was, yeah. And if we want, I can give a little bit of history.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're welcome to. I mean, you have to understand the history to understand everything else.
So the Niagara area is basically, we have Niagara Falls, and that Niagara Falls wasn't where it is now. So we're dealing with Ice Age stuff, and Niagara Falls was actually closer to a place called Queenston. That's where it started, where the escarpment is, and that goes back, 12, 14,000 years. But the indigenous people in the area, they've dated stuff back 8,000, 9,000 years in different areas.
Yeah.
And for a long time, like that group of natives that lived or indigenous people that lived in the Niagara area, they were called the French called them the neutrals.
Right.
And they lived here in and around the Niagara area. They had a lot of villages and stuff up until 1680.
Wow.
And in 1680 was when the wars began, and basically the Seneca moved in, and there was a lot of turmoil happening at the time, and they basically were wiped out by the Seneca. And
indigenous fighting then.
Yes.
Okay.
And this was the French had just started to, the Jesuits and stuff had just started coming in, but it wasn't really. There was a little bit of European contact, but this was all prior to that.
Right.
And that this happened. So they moved out, and basically what happened within the Niagara area is, after that happened, the Haudenosaunee, which they're the group of 6 nations now, they kind of didn't occupy the Niagara area. They moved. Some of them moved over towards Brantford. That's where you have the Mohawk groups, and there was some Senecas there. But they pretty much, Niagara stayed. It was sort of like an open, like they came and hunted, and they gathered and stuff like that, but they didn't actually really settle. And there was a group out of the Toronto area called the Mississauga, and they actually moved in along the Niagara River. And a lot of people get it a little mixed up, because the Mississauga actually were the ones that did the deals and the treaties or whatever with the British to get the land on the Canadian side just prior to the War of 18. So for the Empire, or the United Empire Loyalists. So
right.
So there was a lot of turmoil and stuff in the area up until then. And of course, when the War of 1812 broke out, the Haudenosaunee and the 6 nations, a lot of them, they sided with the British side, because the Americans were at the time sort of clearing out a lot of the natives, and so there was a lot of resentment. So that's why they joined the British, to fight the Americans at the time of the War of 1812. And of course, there was all kinds of stuff that happened with that, and the Mohawks and the Seneca and the other groups, they were a big part of the British keeping the Canadian side. They actually they won a lot of the battles and stuff for the thing. They didn't really get recognition until recently, and which was kind of sad, but it's nice to see that there was recognition, coming back to them. So that's sort of like a brief history of the area, but it shows the kind of turmoil that was happening here all up and down, the Niagara area with the indigenous groups too.
And with them came a lot of folklore as well, right?
Exactly.
Like they've got like was it like a sea monster, I suppose?
Yeah. So yeah, we can get into that. So everybody's heard of Nessie,
Yes.
and well, Lake Erie has one called Bessie, and
Original.
Bessie's been cited. So there again, when we come back to the Welland Canal and stuff, that when the Welland Canal was built in the early 1800s, of course, it opened up shipping to go all over the Great Lakes, and as that happened, of course, we went from where there was just hundreds of ships going through, and the folklore began, right, and that became part of sort of the story about Bessie is being sighted in Lake Erie, and there were sightings, especially a lot from the different sailors and stuff, and basically Bessie is, they describe it as, like a plesiosaur possibly, which is, the sort of the Loch Ness monster side of thing. And an interesting sort of tie-in with that is of course Crystal Beach. You guys have heard of Crystal Beach,
Absolutely.
but the people that don't know, Crystal Beach was a park in the early or late 1800s that was down on Lake Erie in the town of Ridgeway, and Crystal Beach. It was in Canada here we have Canada's Wonderland or Six Flags. It was the Six Flags of the early 1800s. Yeah. Well, or mid 1800s. And what's interesting with Crystal Beach is Bessie was actually sighted at the beach when like beachgoers were there, and people would see this swimming around out in the water.
Did someone get I was going to say a rendition?
It would have terrified them. Yeah. And so there was a lot of sightings back in those days.
But you don't see that now. Like, this wasn't a consistent sighting. It seemed to be more prominent back then, probably maybe because there was less people around, possibly. Or what was the last sighting? Do you know?
I honestly, I don't know when the last sighting of Bessie was. I think they're still there. Now, there's explanations. Like, I've heard different explanations. Of course, Lake Erie is known for, so there's a fish called a sturgeon.
No, I know them. They're huge.
That's where the caviar comes from.
Yeah, and we know sturgeons can grow to be big.
Yes, they're big.
And they also look like something from the dinosaur age.
Yeah, so, they're really, they're big fish.
So it's possible that's maybe what it was.
You'd have to be a really big sturgeon.
You would.
But you could see like the hump of it. Maybe it came up to the surface, right?
Yeah. So that's been some of the explanations that it was a sturgeon. But Bessie's been one. Yeah, there's lots of, there's been books written about it, and I think there's photographs out there that's
crazy from taken. Way back then.
Yeah, but a lot of it there again comes. We talk about folklore and especially in shipping, right? So, and back in the 1800s, like, shipping and folklore went hand in hand, and a lot of superstition, of course, with boats and stuff that was happening on these ships, right? And that just didn't happen in Lake Erie. Like, it sort of permeated all throughout the Great Lakes over time, and of course around the world, like this the folklore and the superstitions, and one, a little kind of cool tie-in, and I did a little post about this, is one of the superstitions that they did follow, and you might have seen it, where they collect, so the fish, when they die, they get these bones in their ears.
Yes.
And when the bones, like when the fish dies on the beach or whatever, the bones kind of wash up, and they'll have like different little markings on them. Now, the indigenous people for thousands of years would actually use these as good luck charms, and they were traded all throughout the Great Lakes. Well, when in the 1800s, the sailors would, they found out about these and stuff, and they would actually take these and put them in their pockets and stuff, and they would be like a good luck charm. And a lot of sailors would carry these to protect them on the waters.
That's
Which
crazy.
I thought
I've
was
seen
kind of,
those.
yeah. And I always thought that was kind of a neat little tie-in with the folklore. And you can go out and actually find these along the along the beach, especially in the springtime. That's a good time to go, is check the beaches in the spring, because that's of course when the fish and everything wash up, and you can find these things. So
That's
I always
crazy.
thought it was kind of a fascinating sort of tie-in with these little. They look like little white
They're just
quartz
those little
stones.
things. Yeah.
Yeah, but they're
Yeah.
not. They're actually the inner part of the bone of the ear.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty
That's
neat.
crazy.
Yeah,
I never
yeah,
would have guessed that. Like,
yeah.
Well,
so
they
why
have ears.
like
What's that?
why does that wash up and nothing else?
Well, it's just the bone. So it's one of the certain types of fish. It's just the
Okay.
bone is really, really dense and hard.
Okay.
So
That would make sense.
now
Yeah.
it's kind of like beach glass too, right? Like the longer it would stay in the water, of course, eventually it would just turn to sand and you would never notice. But for some reason, this bone is extremely dense,
Right.
and it holds it. You know what I mean? They'll last a lot longer. So that's why you can find them. So
Right.
so,
Right. That's
but
crazy.
So
yeah,
do you know why they named it Bessie?
I think they just named it Bessie because it sounds like
It's
Nessie.
like,
Just a
it's like a
cute
lot of
name.
people named their
Yeah,
kids
we-
Bessie.
Well, we know Nessie is because of Loch Ness, and that's why I was wondering, is there some kind of story to that? Why it was named
I'm not
Bessie?
sure why it was ever called Bessie.
Because Lake
Okay.
Ontario is also said to have
Bessie.
Bessie.
Ogopogo? No. Ogopogo is Simcoe?
No, that's out. It was the
No,
Champlain
Ogopogo
was
is
BC.
yeah.
Oh, okay. What's the one called in Simcoe?
I don't know the one in Simcoe, but I know the one. There's one in Lake Champlain, which is
Unless my
Champ.
brothers were lying and they just wanted to keep me out of the water, because
I'm
I
thinking
grew up
maybe.
on Lake Simcoe in the summer. So
But
Maybe,
there's been stories where the people have seen it in the Welland Canal too, right? So,
It's deep though. I could see
yeah,
that. I mean, that's really crazy.
yeah. But yeah,
So-
no, it's pretty fascinating. Like this whole area, and here's another like an interesting story that they're again born from the Welland Canal, and we got to get into this because I felt is of course. And there's stories of this all around the world, but I thought this one was neat because it started in the Welland Canal, and it's called the Black Dog of Lake Erie.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Okay. We're going to go with that one. Then I'm going to ask you a question about something else related.
Yeah.
But you go ahead. Okay.
So the story with the Black Dog of Lake Erie, there again, we're coming back to the shipping. It all begins. It's kind of vague. They figure about 1840 or 1850, somewhere in that area. That's when the second Welland Canal was built, and so the story goes that there was a schooner. Remember, all the ships back then were sailing ships, right?
Yeah.
A schooner was going through the Welland Canal. I can't remember which lock. It would have been probably near Port Colborne.
Yeah, like this is, just to clarify for people who don't know the area, this is one of the largest locks. There are so many different levels.
Yeah.
What would you say in Canada?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like the locks. There's 8 or 9 locks now.
Yeah. So and I mean,
but
400 feet you're going up, aren't you?
But back in that day, there was 40, and of course the original locks were all made out of wood. And then they were converted to stone in the 1840s. So this one is the story. The schooner was coming through, and they come into one of the locks. So of course the ship comes in the lock, and then they fill it with water, and it raises. That's how they climb, up the mountains and stuff. Is it raises the level of the water, and then it releases and goes. So the story is that the schooner had come in, and there was a dog, a black dog. I think it was kind of like a big, I don't know if it was an Irish setter or something, but it was a big black dog. And apparently the ship had kind of hit the side of the the lock, and it caused the boat to rock, and the dog was thrown overboard into the lock.
Aw.
And it's kind of, it's a little tragic, because what happened was apparently the sailors on the ship started mocking the dog as it was trying to catch back up, like it was paddling, trying to catch back up to the boat. And of course,
I can't even hear it. Yeah.
they were all, laughing and making fun of this poor dog. And of course, just when it got up, they would start laughing at it, and it would fall wet. Well, unfortunately, what wound up happening is the dog got crushed in the lock doors and was killed. Now, here's where it gets strange, is that when that ship had left Port Colborne and got out into Lake Erie, they said that night a bad storm came up, and just before the ship sunk and took most of the crew, the black dog showed up on top, like was on the ship with glowing red eyes.
Good.
And
Angry.
yeah, and it was seeking its revenge on this ship.
Yes.
And that was the first one. And after that, this story began to circulate. And the black dog was an omen that would show up. And on Lake Erie, so this is something that's pretty amazing. There's over 2,000 shipwrecks on Lake Erie that haven't even really been discovered. They've only discovered about 400 of them. There's over 2,000 shipwrecks, and a lot of those shipwrecks, there's accounts of the black dog showing up before the ship sinks. And it's an amazing sort of tale that actually went up into the I think the last ones were in the mid to late 1900, like 1940s and 50s. And
so with that many shipwrecks, do we have ghost ships?
Oh yes, there's all kinds of ghost ships.
Well, of course we do.
Yes.
They look at me like, of course.
Yeah. So,
You should know this. Oh,
yeah.
Okay,
And,
okay.
And we're just talking about Lake Erie, but there's and of course the black dog story wasn't just contained to Lake Erie. It grew throughout all Lake Superior, Lake Ontario,
the Great Lakes, basically,
and all across the Great Lakes. Yeah,
right.
But I did a little article about it there, and it was pretty interesting. Up until recently, I'd never heard of that story, but apparently, like, there's been books written about it, and it comes back to that superstition again, with what I mean, and how it can really drive what I mean, like drive
you mad.
Yeah, well, and also drive like these stories, and they would grow, and I'm sure some of them were embellished, but who knows, right? So,
right.
So all I know is if I saw a dog with red eyes and my ship sunk,
to get your life coat on,
that's going to
there it goes.
Yeah, and it's an unfortunate thing what happened with the dog, but
it is.
But there again, it's something that started in the Welland Canal and then grew throughout the Great Lakes region in the 1800s.
So we have the black dog. Do you know anything about the Port Robinson beast, or the beast of Port Robinson? And it also is related to the Welland Canal, because when it went through, it split the city in half. Right. And there's a sighting. It's like I guess people will call them dogmen, but like a wolf that stands upright. We here in Canada they're called like wolf people, but in the US it's dogman. And there are a lot of sightings of it in the Port Robinson area, because everything was split because of the canal. I just wondered if you had heard anything about that.
Well, what's interesting is you talk about that and about the split at Port Robinson, and here's a little interesting fact about Port Robinson is the Welland Canal. That's actually where they began digging it. So Allenburg to Port Robinson was the original spot where the first, I guess, shovels went into the ground.
Right.
And that area is known as the deep cut. And there's a reason for that. So a lot of people don't know this, but that area from Allenburg to Port Robinson was initially going to be a tunnel. They were going to build a tunnel for ships to go through.
That'd be crazy.
Now think about that, with masted ships
Like
going.
those big ocean liner, or
Exactly.
those. Well, some of them are ocean faring vehicles, like boats, like.
Yeah, and so you think about the concept of this, and they actually started building this. But here's what wound up happening is that area where they found out that the rock was unstable, and it started collapsing. It actually killed a lot of people.
Wow!
Right in that area, and they're like hundreds of people were killed in these collapses. And so then they scrapped the idea of doing the tunnel and just opened it up, called the deep cut. And it's in that area that you speak of this, and there could be ties, with this. Like you said,
there's witnesses. I mean, up into the last handful of years, it was one woman who told the story. She was chased by it, and her car there had huge claw marks down the car. They thought they ran it, and they woke up in the morning. It was kind of like I know where you are. I'd be like, freaking hell, I'm moving.
Well, and
that's it for me.
One of the interesting things in that area is we don't have, so in the Niagara area, there is no large cats. So there's not,
but there are sightings.
We don't have like cougars and stuff like that. There are zoos around and stuff, but there's been sightings though of like a large black
all over the world, and I was shocked when we were here. And go ahead, tell your story.
Yeah, about the what I mean, about the black cats and the large cats that have been sighted in and around the Niagara area, and they probably haven't been here for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, right? So so it's interesting how.
Well, we filmed at a place that had a black cat attack, and it was at a stables. And they had a mare that died. She's pretty much sacrificed herself because one of these big black cats came and they were trying to kill a foal. And there was a stall, like it actually got into one of the stables, and I got pictures of these big claw marks. I can send you those. It was unbelievable. And our Ministry of Natural Resources, which are, I guess, like park rangers in the States, they were actually interviewed, and they said, yes, we have found bones. We have found traces of them. We know they're here. So it's just really wiggy when you think that that's something we can at least substantiate.
Yeah,
there's evidence of them.
Yeah, exactly. Just they don't get seen. So they're very elusive, but there's a
for sure.
Yeah. But I thought it was interesting when you talked about Port Robinson. That could be a tie-in with this whatever. Maybe this creature is something that manifested from there again. All the tragedy, the death, the what I mean, that happened all. And this is not a big spot. Like we're talking about a matter of a couple of miles, right? So
it's true. It's not a really big area. There's a lot that goes on. From what you're saying, it's just pretty confined. With a good chunk of the activity.
Exactly.
So
of course, no, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead. Continue.
Yeah, I was going to say, so it that's an interesting tie, and there again, it comes back to with the Welland Canal and all the stuff that's going on, and we've got some other stories too, though we can.
The stage is yours. Go crazy.
And I was trying to figure a couple other ones that were interesting, and
this was interesting when you live in the area.
well, one I posted the other day, and I called it Weird Wednesday Post. And for people that live in the Niagara area, and there again, it comes back. It's a little bit of the canal stuff, but so here in Welland, there's 3 tunnels that go underneath the Welland Canal, and
it's creepy.
And what's kind of interesting is the tunnels, and it's a weird, Michelle and you guys have, it's a weird feeling sometimes when you're driving underneath, because you're going underneath ships. Some you see the ships going over top. Yeah,
but you got that water energy too, and you just feel like it's.
And one of the interesting things is, so there's a tunnel. It's south of Welland, and it's called the Town Line Tunnel, Highway 58A, and they call it the Stinky Tunnel. And
I've never been there.
Yeah, but you might have heard of it, right? It's pretty famous down here, and anybody that lives here has gone through it. And when you go through this tunnel, it's got this really, really bad smell of rotten eggs from one end to the other. So it was built in the early 1970s when they built an extension around. It actually went around Welland. It was a bypass. So when they built this bypass for the Welland Canal, this is when they built the tunnels underneath. It made easier access, because remember I was saying there was to get across before, you had to cross lift bridges, and of course it takes a lot of time. Now with the tunnels, it's nice and easy. You don't have to wait for boats.
No.
But the Stinky Tunnel has, and of course there's always been like, well, why is it smell like that, right? So there's actually a scientific explanation for it. So
is there?
yeah. Well, the scientific explanation is that so the whole area is limestone, and when they dug the tunnels, they had to go through the limestone. There's a layer of gypsum, and apparently when gypsum reacts with water in a certain way, it creates sulfide,
right?
Basically, and that's what gives that really bad odor of rotten eggs, and it'll never go away. It's always
so there you go, people. You're not being chased by demons. It's completely scientific explanation.
Gypsum in your house.
They got all the characteristics.
But I guess you had people would call it like the Stinky Tunnel or the Demon Tunnel. And,
it's true, because it smells the same. But that's crazy.
It'll always smell, because limestone is like sponge. It holds the water over it. So yeah.
But the gypsum is when it reacts, like I say, with certain, it creates like a sulfide, and sulfide is where you get that.
And if you have the limestone on top of it, it's like a sponge that's just sitting on there continually reacting.
Exactly.
With it. That is so gross.
But I thought it was kind of like a neat little sort of a tie-in, and of course that area. When they built the old canal, again, there was a lot of people that died in that area. You had what was called the feeder canal that went to Port Maitland, and there was a lot of people that died building that too. That kind of came out right there at Welland. So
that seems to be like the core. We've got the most haunted town in Canada, apparently, which is Niagara on the Lake.
So
we've got that end, and we've got the falls at one end. You've got where you have two lakes converging into this crazy roaring river that just amps up this energy. Then you've got the canal, which is just pretty much the cause of like multiple deaths. So that's sort of God.
Exactly.
It's like a perfect storm.
It is, and like I say, it's one of the reasons why Niagara is, considered one of the most haunted areas around, just because so much has happened here in such a short period of time.
Niagara on the Lake, for someone who's gifted, is like walking through spider webs when you're walking on the the street, the main street, where you can, with the little shops, which I think are just so charming and beautiful, and I love the people there. But I personally cannot spend a lot of time there. Like, I could never stay in a B&B there. I can never stay in a hotel there. It's just too active. I feel like anybody who walks through there would feel something. There's always an experience, whether you're a medium or not. It's
even
that
residual
haunted.
Energy from the wars are just
for
crazy.
me, I can see the old carriages on the street when I'm there, and
That's
it's not the ones you're renting.
The water, though.
It's just crazy.
Up
on the hill where they filmed from Dead Zone, when they look down where the pergola is.
Yeah.
That we were there for a picnic once. My family, like I made a picnic. We went out there. It would make John happy for his birthday and everything. And I couldn't sit to eat because it was just it was too much.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so beautiful. I love it there.
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about the gazebo, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, I called it a pergola.
Yeah.
The gazebo, yes.
Yeah. What's interesting with that gazebo is that was actually built for the movie. So that gazebo didn't exist. But what existed there was actually a huge hotel just on that property. Yeah, it was a massive hotel that was there that overlooked Lake Ontario. And that's, of course, a lot of stuff happened at that hotel over the years. I believe it burnt down in the early 1900s. I'm not 100% sure, but you can actually, when you go there, you can walk up and you can see the old foundations of this. And there's pictures of this hotel there. It was immaculate. Yeah. That's what originally was there. So of course you're going to get all that residual energy.
You will.
Yeah. Well, that happened. That happened before I knew how to control it. So it was creepy for me, but I want to go back because I do think it's a beautiful town to visit.
And that, like I say, that gazebo, it was made when they did the movie. So it's actually become part of Niagara on the Lake. How would you say, recent history, right? So, but it's become part of the lexicon. Of course, that movie, they filmed. You got the Screaming Tunnel, right? Which was another place that's in Niagara. That's really famous. Of course, anybody that's from this area knows of the Screaming Tunnel, and of course, it's probably one of the most. How would you say? For paranormal researchers, I think more paranormal researchers have filmed at that place and done stories than anywhere else. And there's a lot of information on there. You can go and look it up. But that was another place where the Dead Zone was filmed with Christopher Walken. Really iconic scene, and you can go there. It's still there.
A lot of it's pretty accessible to people. I also find that Niagara has turned into a UFO lookout sort of location.
Well, one of the things, like, and I don't know a lot about that, but I know you've mentioned it to me about Niagara Falls itself and the gorge that leads up to the falls. And like, there's been sightings of, mysterious lights and stuff coming out of the falls and out of the river and stuff.
Well, I mean, there's out of the falls, I don't know, but I know out in the gorge area, it's the deepest part. It's like about 450 feet down. And it's funny because I have a friend, very, very gifted elderly gentleman, and he would usually say, "Oh no, there's something down there." And then we work and we're like, "Yeah, something there." Wayne comes around the corner, sees something, shoot right out of there and stop and go, and within 5 minutes, military helicopters were coming around, and we're just sitting there going,
"Well,
that was what?" So there's something to it for sure, but I also
there's also like there again, we got to remember, and Michelle alluded to this, is knowing you guys live down there, is that there's a lot of rescues happening all the time.
Oh my
too,
God, one a week.
At least, and a lot of them, of course, end in tragedy, which again leads to more of the paranormal stuff happening in that whole area. So
absolutely,
I can't imagine how many people have fallen over the falls.
Oh yeah,
whether on purpose or not.
Yeah.
No,
well,
I mean,
sometimes
over time, like in the last 100 years or something.
Oh yeah.
Well,
a substantial number.
Yeah. Actually, it was something. It sort of triggered something, if you want, a little history thing, and I of course, there's I'll call it the dark part of Niagara Falls. So this is something that happened there. Again, a lot of people don't know about this. So in the 1800s, mid 1800s, there was a big push to get like tourism to come and tourists to come and check out Niagara Falls. So some of the hotel owners got together and had this brilliant idea. They were going to take a ship, dress it up like a pirate ship, and send it over the falls.
Oh my God.
And they decided to put animals on it.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm getting really angry with this animal stuff.
Yes,
okay?
yes. Now there is a bit of a twist. We'll come to it, but it's true. It actually happened. They took this wooden ship. They told people, they actually sold. So what they did was they sold all these dinners for people to come from all over, Niagara, Western New York, to come watch this spectacle. Now, nothing like it has ever been done before. They dressed this ship up. They told people they had like elephants, giraffes, and all these like exotic animals. Well, the reality was they didn't really have that. It wound up being, they had a couple of bears. I think there was some goats, a couple of cows, and they put them on the ship, dressed it all up. Of course, all these people came. It's macabre.
That was huge Victorian times.
Yeah, remember, this is
it was all macabre.
Time.
Yeah.
So, of course, not knowing the dynamics of how the falls works, they sent this ship down, and of course, as people in Niagara know, it's not going to get to the falls because there's so many rapids and rocks. So what wound up happening is the ship basically broke up above the falls. Most of the animals actually escaped.
Right.
And the bears and the animals, I think they only said a couple of geese and it might have been a cow that maybe went over with the debris.
Yes.
But here's what happening is that it was a sort of a change in attitude. They always said it is the people that actually went and watched this were disgusted with it.
Yeah.
And they wound up not paying for all these meals. So these guys spent like at the time, hundreds of thousands of dollars in these meals.
Yeah.
And they never made any money. They actually lost their shirts over this. And it was never done again. And I think some of them lost their businesses because of it. But it was sort of like the ultimate revenge. But there's stories of these bears being, and the cows wandering around on the top of the falls there.
Well, they'd be all messed up too.
Yeah. But it was something that was attempted. Yeah. And,
that's crazy.
I always thought it was sort of the dark times of the falls,
but that was a sign of the times. You look at the Victorians, how macabre they were with seances and picnicking in a cemetery was a big big thing. Like people, you could sell tickets to it and come out and go there. Greeting cards were all very macabre. At Christmas, you told stories instead of getting a gift, like ghost stories. It was really a sign of the time just to do outrageous, dark things.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
But was it considered dark at the time, or was it just considered normal?
Oh, yeah, but that's what made it so intriguing.
Yeah, and people came, like I said, people, when they did that, people came from New York City, and at the time in the mid-1800s, that wasn't easy. You know what I mean? It wasn't easy to do. No. So people came from all around, but I guess, like I said, the sort of take back and, it's disgusting and stuff and that, but is that the people actually saw this and were like, wait a minute, this is wrong. Right.
Yeah.
And then it was never done again, which thankfully, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, no, for sure. Yeah. They'd get lynched if they tried that stuff now.
Wow. Yeah. Well, the mid 1800s and later 1800s were all about world fairs, right? That's how they had jobs and things like that.
Yeah.
All around.
Yeah, exactly.
So, wow. but so that's some of the weird things that have happened in Niagara. But there's one that we got to talk about. That there again, it was not a recent discovery, but one that I found out a few years ago, and I did a post about it. And so we all know the Bermuda Triangle.
Yes.
But do you know there's a Bermuda Triangle in Ontario? It's on Lake Ontario. There's the Lake Ontario Bermuda Triangle.
Yes, and Lake Michigan.
Yeah, and one in Lake Michigan.
That's
But
right.
the Lake Ontario one's pretty interesting because so you have Lake Ontario, big long lake, and at the I guess the east end of the lake, where you have Kingston, and then on the U.S. side it'd be like Oswego,
Yeah.
that area. There's an area um, and it's not very big. It's a small little area. And over the last 200 years, I think they've said there's been over 400 ships that have sunk in this one spot.
That's crazy.
And it was always like over the years, like, well, why are these ships like all sinking in this area, right? And not just sinking, but like disappear, like ships just completely disappearing, like off the map. And there's records of like ships coming into this zone, and like the Bermuda Triangle, their compasses and their instruments start acting all haywire, and then the next minute the ship's gone. And there's actually ghost ship stories that come out of this, right? So what's interesting with that one is for the hundreds of years there, it became like this, we got to stay clear of this and that. And recently, so we say recently, in the last, like since the 1980s, of course, scientifically and stuff, we've advanced, and so I think it was the Canadian. There was a couple of different groups, American and Canadian, but the Canadian Geological Society and stuff decided they were going to like take a look at this area. So they did all these geophysics and stuff, and what wound up really interesting is when they started doing the geophysics, they found this big circle underneath the lake. And it was like, wait a minute, there's almost like this perfect circle where all these ships have disappeared. What's going on here?
Right.
So then they did more and more. And now it's believed that this is an impact site of a meteorite that struck the Earth.
The magnetics.
Yeah, it struck the Earth back, and I believe it was the Devonian time. So like, I don't know how many millions of years.
Yeah, exactly.
But
yeah.
Because it was under the lake, it was never really discovered. But they think that's what's happening is all the chunks of meteor.
Yeah.
Of course, meteorites are, certain ones are really magnetic and stuff, and that's what's throwing everything off. There's also a shoal around there that in bad weather could be enough where ships would actually get into this and be like, you know what I mean, hit the shoals and cause them to bottom out or different things. But this was all just recently discovered in the last 30, 40 years.
That's just crazy.
I thought it was pretty neat that, there again, there's so much superstition over this area, but it's called the Ontario Bermuda Triangle. I got a post up about it. It's
no, I have to check it out and direct people to your page. Can you get Tamara's comment?
Yeah, Tamara asks, did you hear about the stone pillars that appear in the middle of Lake Ontario?
No, I've never heard it.
But I bet you're going to go looking for it.
Yeah, I'll look at that. So,
we're expecting a post.
The one interesting thing I did find out about Lake Ontario is, and there again, this is, it leads to something that they've discovered recently is, we hear about like California and earthquakes and the unstable grounds, and they've actually discovered that there's a pretty big fault underneath Lake Ontario, and there's all these like really weird cracks, and actually Lake Ontario gets a lot of earthquakes, but they're small ones, so they're not, you know what I mean, they're like 3, like 4, they're little tremors, and we hear about it every once in a while here in Niagara. We might get a little shock and stuff, but it's actually a fairly active, it's just a low end active, but there's all these I actually watched a documentary on it, and they were showing about all these really weird cracks in Lake Ontario, and they're saying, like, eventually it could build up to something where it's a lot bigger than we think, right? We think we live in this stable area, but there's a lot of instability, right?
Everybody moving from the shores.
Yeah, but now every time I see that thing, I just picture this meteorite like impacting, and of course, with when the ice age came, Lake Ontario, of course, was all covered in ice, and
yes,
it was a lot of that crater would have been erased by
that's right,
the workings of the ice age, right?
Absolutely. And then this apparently, Amelia.
Samara says there is also a volcano.
Whereabouts is the volcano? Yeah, where's that one, Tamara? Do you know where that one is?
She'll have to, but you have to look up about the stones there.
The stone pillars, that come right in the middle of Lake Ontario. I imagine before all of this water, when things started to recede after the ice age, I mean, there would have been all kinds of cultures. There's already so many ancient cultures that are being found, and they're surfacing off of Toronto, she says. Oh, that's good news for Torontonians.
There's a volcano. Okay.
Yeah. Well, you talk about ancient cultures, so like from Tobermory up into Lake Michigan and up in that area, they discovered not that long ago. There's actually ancient indigenous they believe, like, I don't know if it's villages, but they were herding tracks and stuff that they've discovered underwater. Wow. So they know that area was at one time above water. And it's kind of interesting that there's still footprint, like literal, not footprints, but footprints of human beings underneath the lake. And of course, there's places like that all across Lake Ontario. It's pretty interesting.
And that volcano's got me mesmerized, like, seriously. Was dying to Google it, but I know we do have the Ring of Fire along the Pacific of Canada. Pacific coast, but I have to dig for that Toronto thing because I grew up there. I was born and raised there, and I don't remember it. But then again, I live 4 kilometers away from Battlefield Park.
I mean, there could be ancient, old volcanoes that have been there. Again, when the glaciers came, they erased a lot of stuff, right? So we look at Sudbury, Michelle's from there, and speaking of meteorite impacts, like that is believed to be, that's why there's so many minerals there.
It is 160,000 years ago, something along that line. It used to be underwater. A lot of people don't know Sudbury used to be underwater, and it's Moon City for that reason.
Because it was one of the reasons they called it Moon City was back when they started smelting all the. So there again in the 1800s when they started mining, what wound up happening with the Sudbury area is they cut all the trees down, and then they started smelting like all the minerals. And when they did that, all the chemicals basically billowed out and rolled across the land, and it killed all the vegetation. And of course, the wind came, blew all the dirt away, and now you have rocks. And
astronauts actually trained there for the moon landing.
They trained there because it looked like the moon, but that's kind of it was an ecological disaster. Now I know the Sudbury area in the last there again 30-40 years they've undertaken a big project to bring it was because I went to school in Sudbury and I took geological engineering there, and that back in the late 80s, you go there now, it looks totally different. There's still places where those rocks are like that, but it's not it's grown up a lot. But they've done a fantastic job bringing that back. So they've done amazing things with it. I just remember my father reading me an article that was in the paper saying how it was hit by a meteor 160,000 years ago, and how at one point it was all underwater. And because I grew up in a valley, so I'm sitting there thinking to myself, because all of this would have just been a little thing way, deep
It's just fascinating, when
It
you
is,
hear
yeah, yeah.
stories about your
Sudbury's a
hometown.
fascinating
Well, it
native
has its
area. So,
moments, that's for sure. But
yeah,
I
yeah,
wouldn't
that's
go
right.
that far, but
We won't go that far. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So,
But it's interesting.
geologically, it's fascinating.
It is. It is. Okay, we'll go with
So,
that one.
but I guess a little tie-in, if you want to get. I thought this was interesting. Is so, and there again, we're coming out of Niagara, but that's okay.
Yeah,
About
yeah.
some sort of weird, and if we want to talk about some strange stones and circles, is I think we got to mention the screaming heads.
Okay, let's do the
Yes.
screaming heads. Why
I'm
not?
learning a heck of a lot today.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I don't live that far, so this is really freaking me out here.
So, and there again, it's kind of like so the screaming heads. What's the screaming heads? So,
Yes.
north of Toronto. So we go about 2 hours north of Toronto. For those, if you're looking it up on a map, there's a little town called Burke's Falls. It's on its way from
I know it.
yeah, from Toronto heading up to North Bay. And
Yes.
Burke's Falls is sort of, I guess it's a little more than halfway up. But anyway, Burke's Falls, and out from the main highway, you take a little side trip, and there's a place called Screaming Heads. And to me, some people think it's up, but to me, I think it's a fascinating place. And if you've ever gone there and seen this, and you're into this stuff, it catches you like, wait a minute, this isn't supposed to be out in the middle of nowhere. And what it is so this guy, his name's Peter Camarney. He's actually from Hamilton originally, I believe, or he was a teacher in Hamilton, and he moved up into the South River, Burke's Falls area, and he bought this property called, I love the name, Midlothian Road. Like, what else could be the best name, right?
Who even dreams that up? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So he bought this property, and he actually started building and he built this castle. And when he started building these castles, he out into the property, he built these big sculptures, and there's all different ones. Some of them look like they're made out of cement. They're these big trees. And when I mean big sculptures, like these things are 30, 40, 50, 60 foot tall concrete sculptures that are just like all out in the forest. They're all out in the field. And there's
That's
ones
crazy.
with like it looks like a big screaming head with a hand holding the head. And over the years, he built this. One of the neat things about the castle is he built this big metal dragon on top of so you got
that would work for me.
Yeah. What I love is that when he built the chimney, right, the big chimney, he built the dragon on top of the chimney. So when he lights his fire, the smoke comes out, and it's a huge like metal dragon. It's cool. I think if he lit it enough, flames would shoot out. But anyway,
that's great.
Like that property, it's actually been on a lot of paranormal shows, and I believe a few years ago they actually started trying to film a movie there. But a lot of groups go up and they'll do like seances and a lot of the pagan and the Wiccan groups, they sort of use this to channel and focus energy. And it, to me, like it's such a neat little place to go out and see, and it's out in the middle of nowhere. Like I think it was actually featured on a show called Weird Homes.
I bet.
I've seen that show.
Yeah, it's been on there. But Peter was a school teacher up at Almaguin, I believe it was Almaguin Heights, which was in Sunridge for many years, and
decided to just get weird.
He was like an art teacher up there. But one of the sort of neat things is, and I don't know if it actually went anywhere, but so these big statues that he makes, a few years ago he started a project where if you died, you could actually have your ashes put into one of these, and become like part of the monument. But I don't know if it was ever allowed, because I think there's a lot of, you know what I mean?
Oh my God, that's insane.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
a red
yeah.
tape. Yeah.
And
Wow, that's
I don't know
nuts.
if he ever actually did it or not, or it might have been something that was started and then you know what I mean, the government or whatever said no, you know what I mean, you can't do that. But I always thought it was kind of neat, like
It's very cool.
what a sort of neat tribute. But it's a place there again. If you go on my Historical Niagara page and just type in Screaming Heads, it'll come up. And that was interesting. Was you know, when I posted that, like, a lot of people know about it, but a lot of people never heard of this. And I always love hearing, hey, I went and saw this thing that you told me about, and hearing the reactions, because I've had people say, you know, this is like the coolest thing, and then I had other people say, like, this freaked me. I got there and there was like this really like dark, weird vibe that was coming off, and they had
just because everybody's going over there doing seances.
And
not be helping.
Yeah,
seriously.
But it's one of these sort of like really neat, weird thing that's just out in the middle of nowhere in northern Ontario.
I know, that's insane. That's insane.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about the Devil's Punch Bowl?
Oh yes, we never even got it. So
if you go there anytime soon, you better tell me, because I'm literally a spit in a stone throw
away. No, this is the punch bowl is from the other side, I think.
So you know,
there's two of them then, because there's one up near Grimsby as well.
Yeah, there's one near.
Oh,
Grimsby.
I thought you meant this one here on Ridge.
No.
Yeah, well, so the Devil's Punch Bowl, the one that Michelle's talking about, is it's actually on the American side.
Yes,
and it's actually a really tragic thing. It comes back. We go back in history there again into. I believe it was before. So this would have been before the War of 1812 that happened, and once again, we come back to the Seneca had just kind of moved into the area,
right?
And the British, there was that whole area. There was so the Niagara area for the longest time there was a lot of fighting going on. One was to control. Remember, before the Welland Canal, in order to get from one lake to the other, you had to go through the Niagara River. And there was portages. So there was a portage on the American side and a portage. It wasn't really, there was one on the Canadian side, but they used the American side one more at the time.
More accessible, I think.
Yeah, more accessible. Yeah. So the French and the British had sort of just moved into the area. The Seneca had just moved in. And something had happened where the Seneca, and there again, there's lots of details out there, but basically the Seneca got into a spat with the British over something on the American side, and there was French there at the time too.
Right.
Anyway, the Seneca wound up massacring a bunch of British soldiers and some of the locals, and right at the Devil's Punch Bowl, and they actually, the little river there, they called it Bloody Run because the Seneca actually drove like the wagons and stuff over the cliffs, and like, you know, so many people had died in this massacre that the water actually, the little river that's there, actually ran red with blood, so that it's always been called the Bloody Run. And so the Devil's Punch Bowl is there's a cave down there, and it's said that some of the British and the soldiers and that kind of fleed into that cave area to sort of try to shelter themselves and protect themselves, but they wound up getting massacred right in that one area. So you got a high concentration, and of course that place is a hotbed for paranormal activity, and not only that, but also there's supposedly a curse was put on it, and so they always say, you know, if you go to this, you have to be very, very careful, and you know, you could potentially be subject to this curse, right? And but that's it's right basically located in the town of Lewiston,
Yes.
New York. So it's
Right across.
between Lewiston and Grand Island there.
Yes.
Basically right where the Stratabeck power plant is. It's just down the road from there.
That's craziness.
Yeah, and you can go down and visit that, but that's sort of the back. There again, there's so much more history. I'm just giving the Cole's notes.
Cover.
Because and that's the thing when doing these stories. Like there's a lot of information, and when I do like a Facebook post on it, if I put every single bit of information on one post, like nobody would actually read it because there's so much stuff. So that's what I try to do. I try to get the basic, a couple of points to get people interested, and then build it from there, right? But
absolutely.
But that Devil's Punch Bowl and is an interesting one that's set up.
It is. I think a lot of people have filmed their shows have been done there. It's a very intriguing spot. Yeah. But we do have to take a quick break for sponsor ID and station ID.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Actually, we come back and we'll do. How about we do one more when we come back?
Yeah.
And,
okay.
Yeah, and I'd like to know if you have any if you want to put a book together with your posts and photographs, I think you should consider that. Seriously, all those posts, all that research is yours.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
So think about that. That makes for an interesting. I love coffee table books because they create conversations when you're sitting around them, right?
Well, my wife's the book person. So.
Yeah, well, she can write it for you. You give her the information, and Victoria can write it for you.
And I got to say, thanks, Tamara, for the questions too.
There we go.
She's our third host.
Right.
We love Tamara.
All right.
So, you are listening to The Outer Realm with Michelle DeRoche and Amelia Pisano, coming to you live from the beautiful city of New Orleans. And we are live right now on 105.3 FM as well as 107.7 FM radio. Tonight we have our dear friend and our special guest, Dave Bennison, in the house, and we are talking Weird Niagara. If you wanted to learn history, trust me, I don't live far from there, and I have learned a heck of a lot tonight. You don't want to miss this one. And if you're just tuning in and you want to start from the beginning, you can stream or live on start again. Stream or listen to our archives. I've been like this all day on the platform you normally use. Shout out and a thank you, of course, to the amazing people at Folgers Coffee for fully sponsoring our show from the beginning. And we love you and thank you for your continued support. And a special thank you goes out to for our intro and outro to Dr. Snick, the Sonic Surgeon, Justin Snicker, award-winning composer and musician. You can find his music on Amazon and Bandcamp and find him on Facebook and Instagram. Speaking of which, if you are there right now on YouTube or on Facebook, please give us a like, subscribe to us on YouTube. It doesn't cost you anything. It's free.
That's right.
Okay, so thank you, Folgers. Thank you, Dr. Snick.
And then go check out Facebook for Historical Niagara and check out Dave's content, which is growing by the day and with millions of interactions. So go check it out and see what all the buzz is about for real. So
after the show.
Yeah, after the show, not right now. Right now, you have them in person. You don't need to go
right.
to the page.
You can ask questions and chat.
Yes, right. So, where do you want to tackle next? Then we'll do one last one because we know we only have you for a little while.
Well, Amelia had sort of alluded to a place called Grimsby.
Yes.
And I thought it would, a good way to sort of end it off is of course, Grimsby in the Niagara area has its own witch.
Mm-hmm.
And have you heard of the witch of...
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, I thought you were referring to me. I don't live in
No. So
I'm teasing. You're easy to tease.
Hey, I saw you said you were drinking coffee when you were reading that, but you're getting a little slurry there. You should have
It's been a day of slurs. Seriously, all day I've been like,
Yeah. So in Grimsby area, there's a conservation area, and it actually has its own. It had its own authentic witch that lived there, and and I always thought it was pretty fascinating. Of course, a really interesting area, the conservation park, and that's there, and they there again a lot of Indigenous history. The Neutrals had so for thousands of years, not far from where this is. So there's actually caves located, of course, all along the Niagara escarpment. There's different places with caves in it.
Oh yeah, everywhere.
And but this one here in particular, not too far away, was a fairly large size Indigenous village. The Neutrals there, they lived there for possibly thousands of years. Not far from these caves. It's believed that these caves were possibly used as like a cold storage area, and it was used as that later on, of course, when the United Empire Loyalists and the British had moved into the area. It was actually used as that. But there was a woman that lived there, and she called her. So she was actually considered a good witch. And she lived on the property, and she actually looked after the area, looked after the caves, and she actually there was for a while you could actually go, and I think school groups would go there, and she would do a whole nature walk with them and stuff, and it was pretty fascinating. And they said that there was actually what would you call it? A fountain of youth there.
Oh wow.
And she claimed she was 500 years old. So and she'd been there for over 500 years looking after this property. Right. And apparently they did try bottling the water. There was springs and stuff inside these caves, and they did try selling it as you know what I mean?
Roadside sort of.
Yeah, exactly.
Fountain of youth.
Yeah. But that area has quite the history, because it's believed during the war that German soldiers actually I don't know if they were escaped POWs or something, hid there. There's a whole war tie that hid into these caves, and like I said, with and it's right there in the Niagara, the NPCA. They took over the park a few years ago, and we can actually go now. It's it's pretty neat because it has a really diverse, they call it a Carolinian forest.
Oh wow!
And, that's in the area. So
they have fairies.
Yeah. Well, if the Fae are going to be somewhere, that's where they're going to be. Right?
Yeah, because I've had people say there are a lot of fairies in the whole region. So I thought I'd ask. That was going to be a place, that's where it would be. That's where they
but you can actually go there. It's kind of restricted right now for the amount of people they let in there. But it's kind of neat that. For years, Niagara had its own, and it well known, the Witch of Niagara. So,
I'll elaborate on that just a little bit. We've had stories come in Smithville, where there's also said to be a witch, and people have seen her flying.
Oh, really? Yeah. Well, Smithville's not that far away. So.
That's what I know. That's what I mean. Does your witch fly? Maybe it's the same one.
I want to research that little town, because holy crap,
there's a lot in that little town. I know. That's Dave. The whole region is just a gift that keeps on giving for a treasure trove of information. I have no doubt you're going to.
Now, are you talking about Grimsby or Smithville?
No, Smithville. No, the whole area, the whole Niagara Basin.
One to look into, and we won't. Is Smithville actually has a really neat ghost story.
Okay.
That when you and actually, I believe it was my wife that originally told me about this when I first came to Niagara back in the late 1980s.
Right.
And there used to be, when you went through Smithville, you'd have to drive under. There was a railroad that went over top, and there was a tunnel there, and and apparently there was somebody had died or was murdered, or there was a train wreck or something had happened there, and there was some huge like ghost story that went with it. Now that's all gone now. That all got removed.
A lot of the railways have.
Have gone. But I always remember that ghost story, being told that ghost story about that intersection there. And apparently there's always still sightings of, whatever was going on at the time. But just a little tie into Smithville. So.
Yeah, no, I love it. Well, I know you're limited to your time, so thank you for.
Yeah, no, I'd love to stay longer, but I do have to go.
It's an early morning.
Okay.
I know.
It's so good to see your face and Victoria's.
Yeah, it was great.
I'm glad to see you're doing well.
Yeah,
of course, we're going to have lots more. I post. I try to post something new every day on the thing. I can't do it every day, but usually I got 4 or 5 posts up, and then every once in a while I'll do a video when I got the time. And
you do some great videos too. Right, but, helicopter over the whole area is a good one.
Yes, I've been really fortunate to have a friend that he's a pilot, and we get up and get a lot of aerial shots of the Niagara because you get such a different perspective of the whole area from here.
Right? It's so different. You can see how things connect, and it all just comes together. So make sure after the bad weather we get together. Meet up somewhere in the middle and have some pizza. It's been a while since I've seen your face, and Victoria's,
no, and like I say, thanks a lot for having me on.
Oh, pleasure.
Thank you.
Like I say, there's so much to go through with this history, and we'll keep putting. We're still gonna. There's so much history here. I don't think I could ever run out. So
I don't think so either. You can't get enough of it. Well, thank you, and I'll be in touch, and maybe you'll be, coming on the network yourself at some point and be able to keep telling these stories.
It'll be a little different because then I can.
That's okay. That's okay. All right. Well, you go get yourself a good number.
Drive safely. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Have a good weekend.
It was great talking to you guys. And
pleasure. It's always a pleasure. You're always welcome.
Excellent. It's my party, and you can die if you want to. I got to see. That's the problem. You played Dr. Snick, and now that song's stuck in my head.
It's the one that sticks in my head.
You need to go to bed. You have to release it.
That's right. Anyway, thanks a lot, ladies. And,
thank you.
Good night, Dave.
Talk to you later.
Bye, Dave. Yeah. I learned so much.
I know.
Gosh, that's why I wasn't talking or asking questions. I'm just like.
No, I know it's really great stories, and it's always nice. One thing about it, though, I mean, the whole world is full of rich stories. It's nice to live in an area. I've always lived in areas that have had really phenomenal stories, and I always want to bring up Dolly's here as well from earlier. If you want to catch that one here.
Yeah, Dolly Road. Here's one for you. Was a long haul in Pennsylvania and stopped at a truck stop called White's. I got creeped out because they had a Nazi museum in there. It for real was 2005. I have seen that on television.
See, there you go.
I believe it was the History Channel. I can't remember, Discovery, one of those, but I did see it for like weird truck stop places, and that is
a show for everything.
That was shocking for me, but it's just proof positive that some of them came over and started living in the U.S. Right?
It goes to show you can just be like on a travel somewhere, and you can end up on some side show,
like Route 66,
and end up with this like crazy stuff. So I wanted to make note of that. I wanted to give Dave as much time to talk also because I knew his time was limited. But you know what? It was an excellent show, and I'm really hoping that you guys enjoyed it. I know it's tough. Oh, hold on. What?
He
knows it.
That truck stop has the best sauerkraut. Oh gosh, Wes. I'm guessing it was on your way to one of your Paracons. Let me tell you, Mr. Coleman, you give me a heart attack after I've seen Mayor of Kingston. After I watched that damn series, and it's all about a prison. I can't stop worrying about Wes now because Wes is a good friend. So now, like, I can't even watch episodes or previews because I panic about his life and his
here he is talking
life.
sauerkraut. Come on.
Yeah, it's food.
Well, that was fantastic. I really enjoyed that segment, and it's something more local. And I'm glad there's content from both sides of the border. But
yeah,
that's it's given us a little bit of an earlier end, and that's okay as well. We want to big thank you to Dave Bennison for joining us. The guy, people don't realize he gets up really, really early, for his real job. And we're just grateful that he would share his time with us and tell us all these amazing stories. Knowing Dave, is sitting down with him and his wife, and he just starts blurting off all of these like amazing stories. And I'm just sitting there going, I think you need to come back on the show because these are really good stories. And of course, he tells us so much more. Whatever comes to mind, he just blurts them all out.
He's a great storyteller.
He's a really great storyteller. Yeah. And there's really a lot in the area. Like, I'll tell real quick before we finish off. The story of the Port Robinson Beast I've been hearing this story now for a really long time. In Canada, we call them wolf people, and they're wolves that stand upright. Some of them just look like people would almost call them skinwalkers. Some of them, not all of them. Some of them are pretty robust, but some of them look really lanky. When they run, it's like they're loping, and then they just stop, and then they stand, and they're just these lanky, crazy looking things. So we sort of have a mix of both, much, like those in the US, everywhere really. But this specific one, the story that sticks out with me was one that was actually told to Wayne, actually. And she and a friend, they were just walking, she was like, I guess they were out, or it was something to do with a bridal shower. So I don't even really remember it, but they were walking down this crazy road, and they caught wind of this thing, and it started to chase them, and they were able to get away. I think they actually got to their car and were able to drive away. This thing was like pacing them, and they made it home. They got into the house, and the next morning woke up with these big claw marks on the car. I'm thinking, that is freaking crazy.
That is scary.
And then, of course, we have also in that same area, it's like a ghost light, or not so much a ghost light. It's believed to be a phantom motorcycle, also in the area. So there's a whole lot to the area. And, Dave concentrates so much on the history part of everything and the weirdness that goes around it, like the cryptid stuff. And but I guess in our field with the paranormal, people have been coming to me for years with stories from obviously many regions, but even this region as well. And when you're kind of living in certain areas, you realize that maybe you're a little bit too close for comfort, because that skinwalker thingy ran right. We saw that thing run right in front of the house, and that's really close for comfort. Where he got to the point where he was uncomfortable and came in. And he's very, very logical, and he's kind of went, yeah, I'm good right now. So, you never know. Really take the time to delve into your area and see what's out there. We have such a wide mix of cryptids, UFOs, extraterrestrials. We have ghost stories and haunted locations and history galore, folklore galore, fairies, everything. It's all here. But we live in an area where two of the Great Lakes converge, and you have the power of the falls with an energy that is unsurpassed. It's no doubt that it gives life to literally everything. And, all I'll do is I will leave that right the freaking heck there, because we could go on for a whole Q&A for another 2 hours.
She's mad.
I know. So again, we are at the end of the segment, and big thank you to Dave Bennison. It's just always nice to share time with friends and hear what they have to say. Big thank you to Folgers Coffee, who sponsor the show. It's just thank you. We appreciate you so much. Big thank you to Justin Snicker, for providing us with your music and your voice. for the intro and the outro. We appreciate you so much. If you guys are looking, for specific content, you have questions, etc., you name it, please, 2 ways only. The Outer Realm contact@gmail.com. That's the Outer Realm contact@gmail.com. Or just go to our Facebook page, The Outer Realm, with Michelle Desrochers and Amelia Pisano, and click on the email button. It'll take you right over to us. And again, we do try to answer people in a timely manner, but it does get a little bit congested. Wherever you're watching the show tonight, again, if you love the content on the channel, please support us by subscribing, liking, following, you name it. We appreciate you all so very much. You make the show that much more exciting, and your continued support has us into millions of people tonight. And all you've got to do is just even go check out our audio archives. We are an FM station. We're just not strictly podcasts. So our audio archives tend to do the best. If you go check us out on SoundCloud, you can see the network shows and how well they do, but you can check out the Outer Realm and see how even our archives get into the hundreds of thousands, and some have reached into the millions. So we're very fortunate, and it's a very humbling experience. And that's thanks to all of you guys, all of our listeners, all of our participants in chat, all of our amazing guests. So that's a huge, huge thank you. Now, next week, we have 2 new people who have never been on the show. Wednesday night, for the very first time, welcomes Jacob Cooper. He's going to be discussing his book, Life After Breath with a B, breath. And he's a certified hypnotherapist who specializes in past life regression therapy. He does a lot of different things, and I think you guys are really going to dig this a lot. So make sure you tune in. Thursday night, also very cool. I have a feeling Rob Guttrow, I hope I said that right, will be a repeat guest because he's got so many books out. But because of Christmas, we thought we would keep something very lighthearted, as lighthearted as we can for December, as we always do. He's going to be discussing his book series. And again, this is just, one set of books, Pets and the Afterlife. He's got book 1, 2, and 3. And there's just so much more to him. But we thought this might be kind of nice because, we all want to make sure that our fur babies are okay. And it's always nice to hear experiences. So we brought on great content pertaining to pets. Last December, we thought it would be nice to do it again. So tomorrow, check out the Church of Mavis at 8 p.m. Eastern. Always a lot of fun. Guys are great. And then at 10, get ready if you really want some hardcore politics. If that is your thing, watch for the Centralists at 10 p.m. Eastern and 9 p.m. Central. A lot of bantering going on, but a lot of information as well. So anyway, have yourselves a fantastic weekend. There are great things coming here on the Outer Realm. I can tell you I've been in contact with some unbelievable guests, and 2023 is just going to be jaw-dropping. So anything you want to say, Bubbles, before we say goodnight to the nice people?
No, just have a great weekend, everybody.
All right.
Stay safe.
Good night, everybody.